Hello, guys, and welcome back to the Figure Forecast podcast. It is your host, Maeve, and my lovely co host, Scarlett. We are joined by a fantastic guest this week. We were really excited to get her on, so we can't wait until you guys get to hear what she has to say. We have Sandra Ciavarella, who is an expert mindset coach, former PT competitor who has created something wonderful. She has combined her university studies in psychology with her love of fitness, competing, and NLP, and come up with such a fantastic course. When I read the contents of it, I knew that this was just the one we needed to have on and was going to give us really practical advice for anybody into competing and not into competing, because I think mindset is going to be important on no matter what kind of fitness journey you're on, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, Sandra, I guess start off, say hello, tell us what you're about, how we got here.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. I just want to say thank you for inviting me. This is a little bit of a debut. So it's my first podcast. So I'm very excited to be here and be supporting the Figure Forecast podcast. But basically, look, I started this with kind of a dream and a passion combined together. My background is psychology, and I'm also an ex-competitor. So I had this passion of putting something together because I know that when I was competing, there wasn't anything like this out in the industry where there was a focus on mind fitness and peak performance and how to overcome mental barriers. Generally, the only option we tended to have was to speak to people in our gym or a friend, maybe some other competitors, or even have to go to a psychologist. So I wanted to bring my experience as a competitor and understanding the industry, along with the fact that I'm, qualified from a psychology background, and be able to create something specifically for the female competitor. And that's where my program S.O.A.R has come along. And I'd love to answer any questions that you may have today.
We definitely have some. I know Scarlett has a list. We're going to dive straight
in. Right. So, first thing is, can you pull them up and look at the questions up?
Okay, so we did get some questions in from our clients group, and something I think a lot of females in particular encounter, and this isn't the only competitors. This is, like, we've lost count of the amount of clients we've worked with that have faced this kind of self-sabotage behavior along their journey. And really, I guess what we're wondering is what kind of ways or methods can we implement to push past those self-sabotaging behaviors if you're someone who has kind of previously been very negative towards yourself, and like maybe cut your journey short many times before because you just keep in this negative loop. And
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question, because we experience this not just even as an athlete, but as women in general. So to begin with, let's just confirm what self-sabotage is. And it's when we say we want something and then go about making sure that it doesn't happen. And before I share some of the strategies with you, we've all self-sabotaged. It's one thing that we need to note. It doesn't pinpoint itself at particular people or a particular type of person. Everyone has self-sabotage at some point in their life, and even successful bodybuilders. And the reason we self-sabotage is different for everyone. However, when you do, please recognize that, one, you're not a bad person, nor do you need to feel ashamed about it, because the act of self-sabotage isn't the enemy. The act itself is protecting us from pain or trauma. So even though it doesn't serve us, it isn't to be confused with why we do it. And it is our responsibility to not judge it, but to be curious and find out what it's telling us. So when we think about some of the strategies that we can adopt, remember that whenever you're going into this space and you're learning something new, do it slowly. And when you're thinking about some of the strategies, which I'm going to address with, take them on as one at a time, because it does take time and it does take patience to work through self-sabotage. So first thing you should be doing is listing what you think they are. right? We all have self-sabotaging habits, and there's not a lot of them, but we do have maybe like a top 5 or a top 3. So get them out of your head and write them down and read them out aloud so you can actually, one, fully acknowledge what they are. And next, identify when that self-sabotage behavior occurs. So for example, for me, I know when it comes to mid-afternoons, I find it really hard to not snack, right? Now, I'm on a, training regime myself and all the rest of it, but I know that is my weak space or my weak time. So I know my mid-afternoon, I have to make sure that I'm doing something that is not near a pantry, or I'm going to get to that pantry, right? So it's like putting something in place and identifying when it's occurring. The next thing is challenging your negative beliefs, because this is what fuels your sabotage, right? So those that inner chatter, that little voice that keeps repeating in your head, if it's negative, it is actually going to exacerbate and grow that self-sabotage behavior, and you will. So ask yourself, are these beliefs based on facts or self-limiting beliefs that are actually holding you back? Please stop me at any time if you want to ask any questions as I'm going, but I'm just going to share with you some of these strategies. Another thing that you can do is practice self-compassion. Now, treating yourself with kindness, compassion, and understanding, I know it's easier said than done, and I know we read it a lot on social media and in memes, but honestly, if you can replace your self-criticism with self-compassion when you make a mistake or when you face a setback, one, you will already start to preserve energy within the body, because when we, excuse my French, shit on ourselves, we are using a lot of energy, right? Because we're going down this spiral and we have to come back out of that to then continue what our day, requires of us. So remember, everyone has ups and downs, and it's important to be patient and absolutely forgiving with yourself. Another thing oh, sorry. No, go for it.
Would you say that, like, if you're somebody who has like just started, say, like a transformation or pushing through, and they've never experienced kind of what they, so like obviously it's like seeing to believe it and having it in your mind's eye and things like that, but if you've got that negative kind of vision of yourself and you can't quite visualize it yet, but you want to get there, how would you kind of start to convert them into more positive ways of thinking when you've never really ever been like that? Because I think that's probably going to be most challenging to do, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And, self-awareness is key. We have to be really self-aware in the reasons when it does happen. So if that negative self-talk is kicking in with that self-sabotage kind of behavior, like I mentioned at the beginning, it's identifying what they are. Write them down. If you're finding that you're having this constant voice, get it out of your head, because if you don't get it out of your head, you're going to actually start ruminating. And I call this the rumination vortex. It's in, one of my modules in my program, and it is absolutely addictive. So it's getting it out of your head and writing it down on a piece of paper and absolutely acknowledging that you're having that and going, right, now that I've recognized it, what can I actually do with it?
I think because when, let's say, like one of the most common ones I'll deal with when it comes to sabotage is, oh, well, I have a pack of biscuits, so then I went and I ate 5 blocks of chocolate, 10 packets of crisps. I ordered an Uber Eats, and it goes domino effect for 3 days.
Yeah.
So, and that's probably something that, like, Jesus, so many people listening to this have encountered or currently do. It's definitely one that comes up with me with clients for sure. Like in that instance, like what I say to do is, okay, when you've had that and the thought comes and you're like, oh fuck, and you want to continue, stop, take a breather, and ask yourself, like what's going on and how you're feeling. But I suppose from your perspective and a more kind of psychologist
not psychologist, but from a psychological perspective.
From a psychological standpoint, God.
Yeah.
Does anyone teach English? So yeah, from that kind of point of view, what would you be saying to someone in that situation? Because I think that's probably one that we can give very like actionable advice on.
Yeah, it's actually a great one, and I'm just going to share share a story with you in relation to that. Yeah. So I was in my 3rd competition, and I was in peak week, I was depleting, and everyone knows that who has competed knows what peak week feels like. I was 4 days out from my competition, and I was in a very intense job. I was in a corporate role. I had 2 small sons that were in primary school, so battling or managing the life of family and work. And I was on a major and intense project for work. And all of a sudden, I felt like myself and my brain had hit a wall. And I just walked over to the pantry and I opened up these packet of biscuits, which was supposed to be for the day after my comp. And I didn't have 1 biscuit. I didn't have 2. I had 2 packets of biscuits,
Nice.
right? 2 packets of biscuits, 4 days out from getting up on stage. And they're amazing biscuits, actually. They're called party rings. They're from the UK, and they're like my favorite biscuits. We no longer get any better anymore. I wish we did. But putting that aside, after I had that, 2 things happened. One was, holy shit, I felt amazing. I could think. My body was just like, feeling amazing at that moment. But right at that same moment, the counteract was, what have I just done to myself? Like at that time, I didn't know, physiologically what I had done to myself. And I had to call my coach, who I was a little bit scared of. So I made that call and thought, do I say something? Do I not say something? Maybe, you know what? I can't even get up on stage. It's 4 days out. I've had 2 packets of biscuits. I have totally stuffed my physique for stage. Like that was what was going on in my head. So I rang him and I said, look, I've just had 2 packets of biscuits, and do you want me not to eat tomorrow? And he said to me, no, just got to put that aside and you just focus forward. Just focus on the next day and focus on your next meal, and that's it. Just don't worry about it. Just put it out of your head. And to me, that was good, because I actually honestly felt like I couldn't get up on stage. But I thought to myself, you know what, Sandra? You have been prepping for months for this. 2 packets of biscuits is, I'm sorry, but that's not going to derail my progress, in the sense of if I get up on stage and be my all, there are other successes that I have achieved other than if I don't place. Right? And that was my focus. It's like I have been achieving all these successes on my journey, meaning I'm showing up for my training. I'm eating mostly according to my plan, or a lot of the times on my plan. I'm still balanced with my family. I'm, like there were just all these successes and wins that I started to focus on, and thought there's a bigger picture here. There is a much bigger reason why I'm doing this. So I did get up on stage and I actually won. And I sat there and I was really beside myself. And I thought, 1 minute here I was saying to myself, I shouldn't compete. And I thought, stuff that. I'm going to go and just do it anyway. Like, it's my life. It's on my terms. That's it. Just doing it. So I think when you have those moments where, you're being confronted with food that, okay, in that situation where you've had a block of chocolate or a packet of biscuits or even a few biscuits, first thing is, do not shame yourself. Oh my God, do not be the judge in your space, because you have to be your best friend on this journey. It is a rigorous journey. If you are not your best friend, then the other cheerleaders around you won't be able to help you in that space. So you are your foremost number one. So you have to look at yourself and you have to say, okay, did something that I wasn't supposed to do. I'm human. At the end of the day, we all make errors. No one is perfect on any preparation, in any athlete, in any sport. Bodybuilding is no different. So take it on and just don't judge yourself. Just focus on the next thing and go, right, I need to park that, and I'm not going to kill myself over it. Because again, I teach a lot about energy, energy flow and stuff to do around energy and retaining energy. And as soon as you get into that space of just really being hard on yourself, you are draining your energy. And we as bodybuilder cannot afford to drain our energy, because we already have a tight schedule.
Yeah, that's so true. I think any kind of negativity or like drama from like external sources just sucks the life out of you. Like you're just drained, so drained, because being negative and like using all of your effort level that you have to like criticize yourself or be involved in drama or whatever it is, you're literally just using it and feeding more negativity into your brain, and then it's just that big loop. It's awful.
Yeah. And it does. I mean, it actually absolutely eats into your energy. And energy consumption and retaining energy is number one over time as a competitor, because we spend so much of it in our training regime. We have to eat according to quite a tight plan. So anything that you're doing, you need to be able to remember to do with intention. And that includes what you're saying to yourself in your head, what you keep thinking about.
What about kind of dealing with people around you that might not necessarily get why you're doing it, and then, you know, given that negativity towards you? Because if you're feeling okay in yourself and you're confident in what you're doing, but the people around you might not necessarily be friends, but like, you know, people on social media or work colleagues or something, sort of keep saying things and bringing you down, like how would you kind of deal with that? Because I know that that is a big thing that people do have to deal with, especially in bodybuilding, because not a lot of people do get it. So yeah, especially female side of it, I would say.
I had a lovely DM in my inbox yesterday from somebody who clearly wasn't into bodybuilding. Apparently, I was an addict and had an eating disorder. But anyway, yeah. So it can be quite difficult sometimes, because I feel like if people aren't on that wavelength and aren't in the industry and aren't into competing, and even anyone who's gone through like a lifestyle transformation, they're generally people who have gone from the party girl going out 2 or 3 times at the weekend, getting their takeaways, meeting up from food. So when they stop doing those things, people have such a negative reaction. Oh, you've changed. Oh, you're way more fun. And then they're just shitting on them because they've decided to get healthy, get fit, and like, you know, it can be hard to carry that like negativity if it's just surrounding you a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So as much as we would love to be supported by the people that we care about, remember that when someone has an opinion like that, when you are changing for the better, or you are living your dream, or working towards your goals or stepping into your dream, it's actually not about you. So there's 2 common things that come up in this space. And one of them is they may be measuring your dream or goals against what they would do, right? Which isn't what you would do. So because you're taking a risk and stepping into your dream that they don't fully understand because it doesn't line up with their values or beliefs and mindset, and that's okay, this can cause apprehension and difficulty to understand. It doesn't mean they don't love you. They're just measuring their goals against themselves, which can actually trigger their own fears. So just know that if someone's going to say something, that's not in your control. Whatever their beliefs are, whatever their values are, whatever their mindset is, I know it's disappointing and I know it's very hurtful. But at the end of the day, it's not about you, right? Like what you're living and what you're doing, the seed's been planted in you. You see your dream. It is your thing to go for. And we all don't have the same dreams. The next thing that can actually be a reason why they do that is because they might believe that they're actually losing something that is valuable to them, which is you, right? So all of a sudden your time, your focus, the dynamic between you, meeting their needs, even the experiences shared, these things may change. So it's unsettling for them. Okay, again, it's not about you. It's about what they're seeing from their perspective. So as a competitor, we can become hyper-focused on our sport. We know that. We always hear the message of be 100% in, grind, do everything you've got to, make sure that you keep to everything 100%. But we need to remember that success as an athlete, and not just a bodybuilding athlete, but as an athlete, isn't just found in our workouts or how well we keep to our eating plan. It's remaining connected and balanced in all other areas of our life that are important too.
Yeah, and I think communication there as well, like especially with your family, and especially for first-time competitors, like your family aren't going to get it. And it's not on them to get it because it's a whole new world. But I find by communicating and explaining the process and maybe saying, look, this is what you maybe need to expect, or, look, I can't go to these parties because they're way past my bedtime, I really need my sleep, or no, well, like I actually can't have that, third helping of dinner at Granny's on a Sunday, or even with partners over here, I find a lot of the girls that I work with have FIFO partners. So on their weeks off, the girls really struggle because it's the partner, you know, that wants to get food and all this kind of stuff. And again, it's the communication thing. It's you have to explain your goals and how important they are for you. And I think if you come at it from that angle rather than saying, oh well, I wanna look good in a bikini and I can't eat that, I can't do that, stop annoying me, you're an asshole.
Yeah.
They don't know why they're being an asshole or what way your mind is working. So I think, like everything, communication is key.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%. And so some questions, you know, you can actually ask that person, whether it's your partner or a parent or a friend or whoever, is you can actually say to them, what is it about my goals that make you feel the way you do? Right? So taking the focus off yourself, because it is about what they're bringing to the table, and that's okay. But what is it about my goals that make you feel the way you do? Or you can say, what can I do or explain further to help you understand my goals?
Yeah.
It's exactly spot on. Maybe you need to have the communication, and it needs to be frequent.
Yeah. Because they don't know, like especially parents and stuff. Like my dad asked me, was bread a source of protein before? And I said, I could get mad here and say, no, you don't. Like, but he doesn't know. So I just had to be like, okay, no, bread is not, but it's delicious. Like, you know.
Yeah. I found out that like when I temporarily lived back at home for a little bit last year, well, this year, last year, yeah. Like, because obviously when you're in your own bubble and you know you just see like your parents and your close friends and stuff every now and again, like they think they get it, but until they actually live with you and see how you live, they're like, wow, like, and it's just like my dad used to be like, what you eating tonight then? I'm like, the same thing I ate yesterday. Like,
Again. Yeah.
yeah, oh, are you eating again? I'm like, God, yes, I am. It's meal 6, leave me alone.
Cooking my dinner with my mum when I was home, and her friend had come in and like, you know, I'm taking a picture there for my family story, and then my mom's like, okay, look at the way she takes the photos. Look, it's so funny because you're just doing your thing. You're just, you know, this do, but everybody else is like, oh my God, wow.
But
Absolutely.
I used to get really kind of pissed off about it though, and feel like, oh, you think like they think that I'm just like just a greedy, like eating all the time, and you know I'm meant to be a fitness person, and all they see is me eat, and I used to feel a little bit of like shame towards that, because obviously coming from a background of being overweight, like obviously this is like the flip side of it, like, you know, it's controlled, it's for a purpose, like it's not just mindlessly eating, like we do it because we are trying to work towards something. And I think that's what people don't get as well, because they just see you kind of every 2 hours making something else to eat, and they're like, I thought you were like on a diet, like do you know what I mean? And I think it's like communicating that side of it as well is quite hard, because I don't feel that same feeling like I used to, like, because I've communicated and I have actually, like, you know, being able to show them in person like, you know, why we do it. But I think, yeah, definitely communication with it.
Yeah, definitely the communication is good. And also to even understand that, you know, when we don't get that support, it's our validation or our worth because of our dream and goal. It isn't measured from someone else's lack of support, right? So when you're looking at your worth and validating why you're doing what you're doing, never link it to whether someone's supporting you or not. So even if they are supporting you, that's wonderful and that's a blessing, but it still does not connect with who you are and what you're doing and what you're trying to achieve, right? That's your thing, that's your goal, that's your desire. And so I always sit here and think that finding your tribe and your support network is super, super important, because we will have a lot of people in our natural world that do not understand what we're doing. So we need to seek people who are doing it as well. So then we can share stories, we can share our ups and downs, we can, you know, get advice from one another. And if you can't find those people, or you need something a little bit more, again, getting a MindFit coach, right, and your journey. So getting someone who can actually support you, guide you, and be that sounding board. Because I feel like sometimes we always need that. It's like I remember being on my journey, and even though I was at a gym and I met some amazing friends out of that experience, if even those kind of friends aren't always necessarily competing when you're competing, you kind of feel a bit alone. I did anyway. I felt like, in the evenings when you're kind of, feeling hungry, or you've got to get back on, the treadmill or whatever it is, you feel like you're so isolated. You're the only one doing this, and you're grinding this on your own in your own world. So it's always good to have someone that you can, talk with and be in that network. It's just so valuable, that connection.
It is, because sometimes, like, when you're on prep and you're rough as a badger's arse, you just want someone to vent to, and whereas if you say all of the things that you're going through or that you're thinking to a normal friend,
yeah,
they'll send you to hospital. Like they would be very, very worried in of course, like, because they care about you, but sometimes you just need someone who gets it. So I think, yeah, like making connections within, through fitness and kind of through like different communities, whether it's, your coach has a really good kind of community and, everybody gets on, and, that's why we've like WhatsApp groups and stuff like that when we work with people, right? Because if you're working, especially one-to-one, it can be a little bit lonely, and then you're going training on your own, even if you're not competing. When you're in that world and maybe your outside friends aren't, I think it's just important to have a little tribe of your own that you can kind of talk to about this kind of stuff. Because imagine all I talked about to my normal friends was bodybuilding. Like, I don't think we've my friends very long, they don't know, So yeah, sometimes you just need an ear that gets it.
100%. And that absolutely makes all the difference as well. So just having people that actually know the journey makes all the difference. And the responses are very different as well, just like you mentioned.
Yeah, very.
I have got a question as well, which is kind of not it's not maybe not bodybuilding as such, but if you're on like a fitness journey and you're kind of going away somewhere, or you're around family or friends that are, not dieting, and you're in that mindset of like, I'm going to continue to kind of stick to my plan and, do what I'm doing whilst I'm away. Like, how would you kind of stay in that mindset of not being swayed by other people if they are saying, oh, just have this or just have that or have a drink? Like, because I think unless you are like physically like stone mindset, like, do not look at that glass of vodka, like, yeah, because once you have a drink as well, like, you're getting the crisps, you're getting the pizza, like, it's
I can't.
so how would you kind of deal with that, like, mindset wise?
If you want to, you still want to spend time with family and stuff, and you don't want to miss like a wedding or Christmas or, a holiday or weekend at home or something. But sometimes I honestly find family events the worst for peer pressure. Your friends, you can kind of say, fuck off, like, but like you're in your granny's house and your auntie is actually to eat them roast potatoes, like you're in trouble, mate.
You're definitely in trouble, because that's a measure of your love, right? If you don't eat the potatoes, you don't obviously love her. So
my grandma used to put toffees in my pocket when I wasn't looking when I was little.
Imagine that now. That is a total form of self-sabotage, an external self-sabotage. So yeah, no, look, this is so common, and I'm sure you guys have had the same, but it's like I experienced this. But one thing I remember being on, all my competition journeys is I made sure that I stayed in contact with my friends and my family, and I did go and see them, and I did attend events. And that is because the connection far outweighed, and that's my view of how I tried to see it. My connection with them was going to far outweigh and nourish me more than having an alcoholic drink or eating the food that they were going to have. So it's one, having, that focus on the connection of the relationships and the banter and the laughing and that sort of thing, and not missing out on the experience with your friends or your family. But also remind yourself that it's just a period of time that you're actually going through this. Remember your why. You're walking in your dream right now. A lot of people don't walk in their dream. You're doing it, right? So just keep that in the back of your mind, that even when you're going to these functions and you're finding it hard, it's like you're doing this for a reason. It's not willy-nilly. It's like you're walking in a passion, you're walking in a dream right now, and kind of keep that as a focus. And I always look at this and think, you know, as someone who's a bodybuilder and still tries to integrate their life with, you know, their sport, you guys are amazing, right? It's unique. And this sport isn't for many, and it's hard, but you have the skill and the ability to do hard. That's why you're doing this. So you have the ability. Don't ever doubt yourself that you don't have the ability. And remember that, you know, like your social interaction and connecting, even if you're not traveling abroad, like I mentioned, it is so nourishing for your soul. This is one thing that we find with competitors is they socially isolate because it's okay, the foods, or it's too hard to be around other people, or even just having the conversations with people when they don't understand and you feel that you have to justify. Now, being around people is absolutely imperative, and there's been studies done on this, so proper, you know, journals written about social isolation and bodybuilding. And there's been people, and I don't know if you may know some people, but people have lost friends, you know, whilst they've been on their journey, or you know, there's been some sort of fallout. So don't take something away that is good and balanced for you when you're already taking on a rigorous sport and a lifestyle. Don't take anything away. If anything, you need to feel the things that actually are going to give you peace.
Yeah, like, because if you were kind of saying, right, I'll stay at home all day today, but what's at home? Food, pantry, temptation, Netflix, all
And
that.
your mind, right? What's
And your
going on?
mind,
What are you
yeah.
saying to yourself all day? You're by yourself. Your friends are out together and they want you there and you're not there.
Yeah. I think, like, if you have the choice, obviously, of what you're doing, maybe try to not organize, you know, food related activities later in the latter stages of prep, but suggesting like activities, stuff to do, like go on a lovely coastal walk, go to the beach, go bowling, go, like, you know, do something fun that isn't revolved around food or alcohol.
Yeah, absolutely. But if it happens to be some options that you could do is, like, you know, eat beforehand. I remember I used to eat just beforehand, just to kind of
In the
satisfy
car.
a little bit of,
Lunchbox in the car.
I know, it's like eating beforehand. Or if you have the option, pick the place, right? And call ahead for someone to prepare your meal. So for example, I just started my prep this week, right? For my bodybuilding, hopefully for season A next year. But I've started my prep. Now I'm going out to dinner tonight with a girlfriend. I know it's only week 1. However, I still want to stick to my plan. So I've gone out and sourced a place that I know I can have fish and vegetables.
Yeah.
And I've just called ahead and said, this is what I'm going to eat, because I still want to catch up with my friend and have this moment. But also another thing is having the flexibility. If you have the flexibility, picking the time when you can meet up with a friend, right? Like, I always find the best times is morning tea or afternoon tea, because you can sit in a cafe and have a long black coffee or a cup of tea, and they're doing the same. So it doesn't feel like anyone's missing out on anything. So maybe try and pick, like you said, the times of whether it's a coastal walk or an afternoon tea or something like that, where it's not so in your face, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And I think even, like, if you're going to the likes of family dinners and stuff, I have been that person who's sat and weighed my turkey onto my plate. Like, who cares? Like, realistically, who cares? They think you're weird anyway. Like, just add fuel to the fire. Like, you're gone down that hole.
Yeah. Isn't that an essential item, you know, leading up closer to comp day anyway?
Right? Yeah.
Scales in your backpack or in your bag. Like, it's just, it's like it gets whipped out.
I used to, for my first prep, I was still working as a flight attendant, and I did fly in, fly out up in Scandinavia. So I was away for, you know, 6 days at a time, changing hotel every single day. So, like, you can imagine how hard that was to manage. It was, I actually don't know how I did it. I brought days worth of meat up with me. When that ran out, I'd have 3 bowls of oats and protein a day. Like, I did it. But I also kind of had places that I knew, okay, well, they just do a big skewer of chicken breast. Like, I'll go there. What did I do when I went there? I had my weighing scales. I weighed the chicken breast and I weighed the boiled potatoes. Did anyone care? Like,
No.
I think no one actually cares. It's like that thing that you think people are looking at you in the gym. They're not. You know, like, no one is actually noticing the fact that you're sitting in a corner weighing your chicken.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. 100%. Or people are just fascinated. When I was bodybuilding, I was working in corporate. When we would go to functions or off-sites for a few days, you know, when everyone has a breakout and in the morning, like, you've got all the muffins on the table and all the sweets and everything, at the hotels when you're having, like, you know, like a seminar or something, I've organized for them to bring out a meal, like meat and vegetables.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden I'd have like, we're on the table where there was like a special food of gluten-free, and that all of a sudden there was like a little steak, and I don't eat red meat anymore now, but it's like a little steak and some green beans, you know, and I go, who's eating that for morning tea? I'm like, that's me. It's my sport, just how it is. And you know what? I was freaking proud saying I did not care.
Yeah.
I didn't care about the judgment, because I loved the fact that I was actually going out and doing what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think people do
And
really
people admire that about you.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So
There was actually a really good one in regards to stress and kind of internal and external stress that we wanted to ask you. And it's kind of, I'm definitely one of these people that I'm a very emotional being. I'm a stress head, and I let that get to different things that I'm doing. So if I'm having like a bad mental health day, I'm like, oh well, I'll just do all of that work tomorrow, or I'll do this tomorrow, whatever. Now I'll still on prep get my cardio done, get my training done, like get my meals done. That's never not going to happen. But how can we, or like what kind of things can we do to like push past emotional stress from like external sources to continue to kind of get our shit done, get the training done, don't let it, you know, turn into a piss poor session, and, you know, like keep showing up and ticking the boxes that we have to, because we don't have another option. But it can be incredibly difficult when we're, you know, when we have the weight of the world in our hands.
100%. Like, it is so challenging, you know, because I feel like, and, you know, a lot of us feel this way, that, you know, our emotions are dictated by our external circumstances. I mean, even as a parent, if you're a parent and you're competing and your child just keeps pushing you and pushing you and pushing you and depleting you, and then you feel like it's hard to train, or it's hard to get your meal prep, you know, in order, and that sort of thing. So it's definitely challenging, but it is actually possible to maintain focus and keep progressing. So the first thing I would probably suggest is acknowledge and accept that emotions come up, right? We're emotional beings. We have emotions. They come up. You're not going to, you know, lose them when you're on your bodybuilding prep. So recognize that it's normal for the emotional stress to come up from those external factors, and allow yourself to actually acknowledge and accept those emotions without judgment. Because the first thing we tend to do is, if it's disruptive, we'll tend to judge ourselves and go, oh my God, I need to be doing this. Oh my God, I should be thinking like this. Oh my God, I should. So that's another one. Take should out of your vocabulary. Like, it's the worst word. It invokes shame, and it also actually puts a lot of unnecessary pressure on ourselves. So take that word out. There's no should in a healthy, normal human lifestyle that is still faced by challenges. Give yourself permission as well to feel what you're feeling. Don't suppress the emotions, okay? Because if you do, it's going to impair the ability to effectively deal with them. So allow yourself to feel them. It's okay. We all have it. It is perfectly okay. Another thing that you can do is practice stress management techniques. So, you know, a lot of us that are in fitness and health, we already know that, you know, deep breathing exercises are good, and they do work. Meditation, whether you're journaling, even engaging in some sort of hobby that promotes relaxation, something that you know that you can put into your toolbox that you can just pull out. Okay. And everyone's different of what will work for them. So you may need to try a few things just to see what's going to work for you in that moment.
Yeah, I think the breathing is fantastic. Like I'm definitely, I'm not a journaling person. I'm not a, you know, I'm not a kind of witchy-woo stuff. For me, I just find it very hard to buy into, because I'm quite a science like kind of person. But the guided breathing, incredible, like unbelievable. I remember one day I was just like pulling my hair out stressed, and I searched on YouTube for beginner guided breathing, and it was probably the most relaxing 15 minutes of my fucking life. It was incredible, because everything is just still, and you just have to focus on that moment and that breath. And I find it unreal. And even now, if I'm super stressed, I'll just like close my eyes and try to do the 4-second box breaths. And it just brings like heart rate down, brings like, it lets you focus for a minute rather than like those thoughts just going everywhere. I find that really useful.
That's great. And keep that up, because, you know, sometimes when we're trying new things, we may think, you know, oh, it might be quite fluffy or whatever, but until you try something and see what it actually does for you, you won't know.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And it's also around adjusting your goals temporarily, because if you are going through an emotional circumstance, and we all do, I mean, sometimes things don't work to plan, right? When we're on our journey, something's happened, something's happened to a loved one, something's happened in our own life, whatever it might be. So during those emotionally challenging periods, just adjust your gym goals temporarily. Now, I'm not saying that, oh my God, stop it or whatever it might be, but it's looking at it going, I might need to adjust it for a day. I might need to adjust it for a few days or maybe a week, right? So during that time, it might be setting smaller, more attainable goals that align with the circumstance that you're going through. Because by doing that, you're actually going to maintain a sense of progress and prevent feelings of overwhelm or disappointment.
Yeah, like if you have, let's say, a very neurologically taxing session, like your heavy quad day or something, and you are just in the pits, you're probably going to go into that in a really shitty mindset, thinking, I'm going to have a shit session. If you think that, you're going to have a shit session, and then you're going to feel 10 times worse afterwards because I fucking wasted a session and that was shit and I'm going backwards, and then you're talking negatively to yourself, and then it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. Whereas if you say, okay, look, I know today is not the day. Can I do my upper session? Can I do my cardio? Can I move this around and do this tomorrow? Like in that instance, you're probably better doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even modifying the workouts just to something, like you said, something that's a little bit lower intensity for that day or 2 days, whatever it might be. The key is actually to make sure that you're still staying active, but it's just slightly adjusting it just so it can actually work for your emotional state, not against it.
Yeah, and like it's obviously a little bit more awkward for competitors when you're on prep and stuff. I get that, but progress wise and how your mindset is after the fact is going to be so different if you're able to adapt it. And like in those cases with non-competitive clients, I'd always say, I don't want you going to the gym today. Like I actually want you to get out, leave your phone at home, get some fresh air and go for an hour's walk, because that is actually going to do you so much more like good than trying to force yourself to go to a gym when you feel like this.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the beauty of it, right? If, obviously, like you said, being on that prep, it's really hard to like not do your gym session and that. So if you're finding that, that part of it is still a bit challenging, but you might still need a few days of respite, then try and work in things that can actually help or nourish if you can't take that workout away or modify it, such as go to bed earlier, like try and get some sleep or do some restful relaxation and rejuvenating type, kind of activities, whatever it is that you can just sit and just be in a moment of peace and quiet. Just try and grab those moments, because all that will actually help.
Yeah, I even think like I have like an emergency kind of protocol if I'm just like
That's great.
yeah, like so I'll do my box breath and then I'll try to go into my room or like somewhere quiet, and I have Bob Marley, Three Little Birds, favorite song to just chill me out. And I think just having like little one or two things in your arsenal like that, if you're just like, I'm actually about to punch a wall, I need like, what do I do? I think just having like very quick like things that you can do straight away that take under 5 minutes, and you're right, okay, I can kind of continue with my day until I'm away from people or out of work or out of the gym or something.
Yeah. And that's
so
perfect. Sorry, Scarlett.
So on like the flip side of that, like if you're someone who has been like really focused, hyper focused, you're absolutely smashing it, making great progress, and then like say something like an injury or an illness creeps in, and then you're kind of forced to stop. How do you then like pick that mindset back up? Because you've kind of, obviously when you're in that kind of flow of everything and you're just getting up and you're doing your stuff and you're like hyper focused, like when that's taken away, how do you then kind of get that going again, if that makes sense, in a mindset way? Because
isn't it? Like we hate change, and especially people who are in a fitness journey are very like routine by nature. And when you change that and you're mentally ready to train, but your body won't let you. Like a few of my girls are injured at the moment, and that is like they struggle massively when they cannot train, but they have to not train. That's a really difficult struggle for a lot of people.
or even like the mindset of like just not wanting to at this moment in time. Like, you know, because if you've been poorly and your body is exhausted and, you know, you've had to take that rest, then like you kind of lose that oomph.
Yeah.
I say that a lot,
Yeah.
but you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
to
almost
get
like that
yourself
when you're
going again.
unmotivated
Yeah.
to train.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there's two questions. So one is like probably when you have an injury. So you still mentally you want to train, but you know your body's not going to come through.
Yeah.
And then the other one is just pushing past that mental barrier when you feel unmotivated to train.
Yeah.
So with an injury, I mean, at the end of the day, if you've been advised by a professional to say, sorry, you've got an injury, you can't actually do X, Y, and Z for the next however long, then you need to take that into your stride, right? And you need to go back to and understand that either you, and I've seen people go ahead and still push themselves through an injury, right? But what's the cost to that? And you have to ask yourself as well, are you in this for the short term or the long term? Now, if you're in it for the short term and you're just doing this journey, doing this one prep, and that's all you want to do, then if you have a serious enough injury and that you're being advised not to go ahead and continue to train, then you may have to actually hold off. Like you can't defy what the body is actually going through. I mean, there's that mind-body connection. I get that. But it's like if your body is injured, then you may have to hold off and wait for another season to prep again, right? But if you're in it for the long haul, then it's looking at this going, well, this is just a bump in the road, right? Anyone who is in the long haul of a sport, you will be confronted with injuries.
Yeah.
Right? Because your body is being tested and tried time and time again over long periods of time, right? Not 1 year, couple of years, however long. So you will be more confronted with injuries, and you need to be able to look at that and go, it's part and parcel of being an athlete. Like it really is. And I know it's disappointing, but then it's like having a focus on maybe something else during that time, right? And whatever that means for you to be able to get through it. But maybe don't always as well just have one opinion from one professional. Like I know when I've had injuries, I've gone to 2 different people just to make sure that, you know, all the bases are covered. There might be something else, and that's okay as well. So that's a hard one when it's injury, because whatever's still going up on here, if your body's saying no and it's just not doing it, what do you see normally athletes? Like if you go and see footballers, professional footballers that you watch on TV, as soon as they're injured and they're coming off, you know, the field, you may not see them for 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
You not see them for 6 weeks later because of their injury, because they're looking at their sport as the long term. And you're a professional in your sport. You want to know that when you get into it and you're doing it at your peak. If you're injured and you want to keep going, I don't see how you're going to still reach your peak.
Yeah. And it's like the daily checklist kind of changes, you know, like when you're, you know, fit and healthy, it's you get your session done, you get your cardio done, you get your meal prep done, you get this, something, the other. But like maybe making a new checklist, okay, well, I have to do my rehab work in the morning, or I have to do the stretches here, and then I'll still do my meal prep, I'll still do this, I'll still do that. And just kind of like making a productivity kind of list for your day can be really helpful. And like even a client who's injured at the moment, she's a fitness instructor and PT herself, so she's really like she's raged and she can't train. And what I said to her is, because she's just kind of recently went out on her own and, you know, is kind of trying to grow her business, get her name out there. But I said, while you're still, you know, quite mentally focused on all things fitness, and you know you want to be involved in that, why not go off and do some mini courses? Why not, you know, use that hour a day to go and listen to a podcast, watch a lecture, do something that you're still actually going to see a lot of progress from. You're going to build your business from, you're going to do that and the other. So you're still using all like your brain energy and your brain power. You're just not in the gym.
Absolutely. So it's basically whatever's still in your control, keep in your control and exercise that
controllables. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other question, like, you know, the mental barriers that you have when you're feeling unmotivated to train. Oh my God, this is like so common as a competitor. I mean, I do anyway, but I feel like we get sick of training sometimes. It's like, because we're doing so much of it and it becomes such a huge focus, because as a bodybuilder, when we train, we're not willy-nilly trainers. We go in with a purpose. We know that we want to hit certain levels of achievement even in those sessions, right? Like we're there, we're not, having, casual conversations with people and having long stretches of rest, and that we're there to kind of achieve what we need to achieve to get the result that we want. So at the end of the day, when you're feeling unmotivated, yeah, okay, we know we still need to train. And we're going to have more of those, especially coming closer to comp day as well. But motivation alone doesn't
because
work.
you feel like it's just an unproductive session a lot of the time, and you're just so unmotivated to go do it because you're just like, I'm lifting a piece of paper from it, Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It's like, again, that voice can come into your head and it's trying to switch that off, right? And just focus at what the task is at hand. But what you can try, and this is a technique that's already been, it's quite popular. It's called habit stacking by James Clear. Has anyone heard from Atomic Habits? It's wonderful, right? So it's already reinforcing an existing habit with a new one. So you know that with training, you're not always going to be motivated to do it, but it's a habit and it's something that you have to continue to do as part of your prep and as part of your journey. So when you're feeling unmotivated to train, or even eating one of your prep meals that you kind of get sick of eating, right? Pair it or stack it with something you desire or favor. So this can be just an activity. And again, this is going to be different for everyone, but it might be watching a favorite TV show straight after your gym session, or going shopping, or having a massage, reading a chapter of a book, knitting, whatever it is. Find something that lights you up and that you actually find some joy in, and stack it against that gym session. So straight after that session, or straight after that meal that you've had, 100th time, do something straight after that. Because it's not that you're not going to feel like you don't want to go all the time, but there are going to be times when you don't. So have something in your arsenal, as you say, Maeve, to already be ready. Draw upon, because you don't want to do it at the time. And the reason being is because you're already tired and you're lacking energy. And the last thing you need to do is try and figure out how to get through this training session and how it's going to be motivating enough for you to actually get there and complete it, right? You don't want to just walk away and go, stuff it, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, for sure. I think we just had one more question, and I wanted to touch on it because it's one that I think people either don't know how to differentiate, or like they ignore. Let's say we're very good at kind of picking up on physical things that are wrong, and like injuries and something like that, but learning how to like differentiate between physical stress and mental exhaustion, like physical exhaustion and mental exhaustion, and when we need to pull back and when we need to just push through it.
Yeah, it's hard because in bodybuilding we have to push ourselves, I guess, actually mentally just as much as physically. Keeping to a routine so rigid to a sense, right? I mean, here we are all day. We have times of when we have our meals. We have times of when we prepare our meals. We have times of when we need to train, and what supplements to take beforehand, and then how to actually integrate that with our normal life. So if you've got your job, and if you've got a family, and you've got commitments and other responsibilities. So it all feels like it can be kind of one and together. When we're showing a decline in physical energy and performance, that generally shows up as physical fatigue, muscle weakness, maybe decreased coordination, and even difficulty in sustaining physical exertion. So when you're in the gym and you just feel like you just can't power out the same kind of reps that you would normally. And other signs around that can be like heavy breathing or muscle soreness, reduced strength. So just know that the body's kind of communicating with you. You're going to feel it. You're going to see it, right? It's very tangible. You're going to see those things. And when to pull back, especially if it's physical exhaustion. So if you're noticing it, I would say the first thing to do is talk to your coach, like talk to your PT, because they're the expert in the field of being understanding of what the body's going through, especially through such a state. So you need to listen to it, recognize the signs of physical exhaustion. You may need to increase your rest and recovery through that period of time, right? Because if you don't, you're going to increase of injury.
Yeah,
right?
I think coaches are going to be quite good at spotting that anyway, because we're looking at things like heart rate, and like we're asking you kind of these questions in check-ins, let's say, that are going to monitor those kind of things. But it can be harder to kind of manage or know how to deal with the mental exhaustion.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're looking at mental exhaustion, I mean, this is kind of also known as like mental fatigue or burnout. And when you get to this state, it is extreme mental tiredness, okay, and real depletion. And it generally kind of occurs when it's, after prolonged periods of, intensive, almost like cognitive demands or emotional demands. So whether that's, at work or with the family or within your training regime, whatever that might look like, it can come across as well when you're training excessively. And we know as competitors, we do train a lot, even if there is even some type of learning pressure. So just, from an academic perspective, if you're someone who's studying or learning new things at work or learning stuff, I mean, you've got to remember all of this takes energy, right? One thing's not easier than the other. So, and again, work stress or even personal challenges, but it shows up as a lack of motivation. It shows up in difficulty concentrating. It shows up in decreased enjoyment of activities that you once, felt joy in and doing. It shows up in irritability and even emotional instability. So they're the ways that you can identify if you're becoming burnt out, right, from a mental perspective. So did you want to ask something? No, sorry. So when to pull back on those things, right? So if you're experiencing that decreased focus or diminished performance or even increased risk of mistakes or accidents that you think might actually happen, it's just to know that you need to recharge mentally. And at that stage, that is where you need some form of rest and relaxation. So you do have to go back into your self-care toolbox and you have to pull out those things that you've identified and worked on to know what you can pull out to gain nourishment back into yourself. And I'm not talking food, I'm talking like mental health nourishment, right? So whatever that might look like for you. So I know for myself, if I need to have downtime and recoup in my mind after feeling, mentally exhausted, I need to get outside and just go for a really slow, casual walk and just listen to mostly classical music, like music that's just got some really good hymns, like just something that actually is taking me away from the world. I need to step out of my space. I need to just get out of my world and step into a space of where I feel like time has stopped and I can just breathe.
Yeah, for sure. Nothing beats a walk near the water for me when I'm just like, whether it's just along the river or down to the beach or whatever it is, I just feel like that's super calming.
Yeah. And that helps. So, finding what it is. And again, before you go on a bodybuilding journey, before you go and decide to compete again, start building your toolbox, build your arsenal. You need these things to be able to draw back on before like you getting there and experiencing them at the time, because at the time we're not in a headspace to be able to decide what's going to work and what's not going to work. We don't know.
No.
Fluffing around, and then before you know it, you've just jeopardized maybe part of your training or part of the week because you're trying to figure out these things. And then normally when we don't know something, that's when we become more stressed.
Yeah, because it's the whole like overwhelm of not being sure of something. Yeah.
It's a definite overwhelm. Now, on the flip side, to know when to keep pushing through, right? So we know that, we've got to prioritize rest and recovery. And we know that, fatigue can be like, if it's, can be somewhat kind of temporary, but to know that if we're going to push through, because at the end of the day, we still have a deadline, right? We've still got a competition date. And we've still got critical training.
You're a month out, you're going to feel shit, man. And, like that's to be expected. So in those kind of instances where, it's not really an option to kind of, I'll take 3 days off. I'll go for a pedicure, massage and read my book. Like, sorry, you can't do that. Like you actually just have to push through. So like in that kind of scenario, what is your last bit of advice for us?
So a couple of things to think about is, one, just the intensity and the duration, right? So assess whether the fatigue or mental strain is within a manageable range or if it has reached a level that possesses a significant risk, right, to your well-being or performance. First, you need to be self-aware about that, because what you may consider to be pushing yourself, you may have some extra magic in the toolbox to kind of push yourself through, while someone could be right on the edge. Right. So this is not to be for everyone. It's like you've got to identify where you're sitting. Okay. And two is acknowledging that the fatigue or the mental exhaustion, it can actually compromise your safety, right? Which is going to increase your injury. So if you already start to notice you're starting to feel a little bit off and wobbly, and it's a different feeling. Like, I'm not sure, I mean, everyone has gone through different stages and experiences in their life when it comes to mental fatigue or burnout, but you start to get to identify where it's just, okay, I know I'm tired, but I can kind of push myself through, as opposed to I'm feeling a little bit off, like something feels weird, like I've never felt something like this before. If you're starting to get those feelings, then that's when you need to actually stop and go, right, I need to either speak to a professional, or I need to speak to my coach and just explain what's going on. Okay, so don't keep that internalized. And then think about the long-term impact, right? So, ask yourself what could be the potential consequence if you did push through. So could it prolong your recovery, exacerbate a mental health issue, or even hinder the ability to bounce back into, what your long-term goals are? So knowing the difference between whether to push back or keep going is a really, really fine line. And it's different for everyone. So striking that balance is a challenge, but it's something that I would always go and just seek an external source if I was unsure. If I was unsure, I would always ask. I would go first to my coach, and if they didn't really understand it, or you weren't getting what you needed, because remember, PTs, coaches, they have a limited also, unless they've studied it intensely, like mental health or mental well-being, they have a limited understanding, and they can't stretch themselves to all their clients either. It's just impossible. So if you're worried or you're concerned, seek some sort of support, right? And I would just highly recommend getting professional help in that space, just to see where that identifies for you.
Yeah, for sure. That was, we covered so much ground, but I'm obviously a bit conscious we're on the hour mark, and
I know.
do any longer. So I think to wrap up, would you like just to tell people where to find you, like what your course offers, like all that jazz?
Yeah, so basically it's a 4-week program. It's on the Women in Focus Bodybuilding .au website. So if you're going there, you'll have a look. You can see the course. You can see all the content of what it covers to see if it works for you. And the great thing about it is that even though it goes over 4 weeks, each week you will get the next week's course and all the recordings. So you can kind of go through and learn all the information for that week in your own time. You get a workbook as well. So you're able to work through a lot of the exercises. And then each week I do group coaching. So live group coaching sessions with that cohort. So we'll run a very early morning session and an evening session to cater. And you can attend both, or one or none, but you've got group coaching there with that community. And the next course is coming on the 29th of this month. So that's when it goes live. So if you're interested, please sign up. But I also, if anyone is also interested that is in a gym or a facility of some sort, I could actually run that course in a 1-day intensive workshop. So sometimes people want to have it face-to-face, and I can offer that face-to-face as well, along with one-on-one coaching. So I actually do one-on-one coaching with athletes too.
Amazing. And do you want to let everybody know your socials and where they can find you?
Yes, so it is just Women in Focus Bodybuilding, but between each word, unfortunately, I had to put like one of those
underscores.
Underscores, yes.
Why Instagram? Why?
I know underscores. But please go there. If anything, even sign up for the newsletter, because I actually talk about this stuff in the newsletter. I give snippets of this information and the strategies. So you might just find that every fortnight when you get one, you're like, oh my God, I've been thinking about that. Oh, here's some things of how I know how to do that, and try to work through. So it'll always just be valuable information to help enhance your growth and get you to be that peak performer.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. That we got so much from that.
Thank you very much.
Competitors and just fitness enthusiasts will love this. So thank you.
Thanks so much. And thanks for inviting me. And if anyone has any questions, please just reach out.